For my daughter's 11th birthday, I wanted everything to be perfect. She had been through a tough year, losing friends when we moved, struggling to adjust to a new school, and still managing to smile every morning. So I planned a small family party at my parents' house. My sister insisted on helping with decorations. My mother offered to bake her famous vanilla cake, and my father promised to grill. It felt like old times, and for the first time in years, I let myself believe that maybe things were healing. My daughter Emily wore her favorite white dress, the one she had been saving for a special day. She twirled around the living room, her long brown hair catching the sunlight, her laughter bouncing off the walls. "You look beautiful," I told her, and she grinned, like a princess. "Exactly like a princess," I said, brushing a strand from her face. But as my parents and sister watched her, I noticed something odd, a flicker of irritation in my sister's eyes, the tight smile on my mother's face. I brushed it off. Maybe I was just being paranoid. The afternoon went smoothly until my niece, Lily, arrived wearing a glittery pink dress. My sister fussed over her, calling her the star of the day, even though it wasn't her birthday. When Emily walked over to show her the bracelet I'd given her, Lily scowled. "Why do you always have to act like you're better than me?" she snapped. My sister quickly pulled her aside, whispering something I couldn't hear, but the damage was done. Emily's smile faded. I tried to distract her with presents, cake, laughter, but the atmosphere had shifted. After dinner, I went to the kitchen to wash dishes, leaving Emily with her grandparents and aunt in the living room. I could hear them talking softly, then Emily's nervous laugh. Then silence. A few seconds later, a sharp cry. I dropped the plate in my hands and ran. What I saw froze my blood. My parents were holding Emily's arms while my sister stood behind her, scissors in hand. Strands of my daughter's hair lay scattered on the carpet. Emily's eyes were wide with terror, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Stop! What are you doing?" I screamed, lunging forward, but my father blocked me. "She needed it," my mother snapped coldly. "She shouldn't try to show off. It's not good for a child to be vain." My sister laughed. "Now she looks like Lily. No need for competition." I shoved past them, wrapping Emily in my arms as she sobbed uncontrollably. I could barely breathe. "You monsters," I whispered, staring at the people who raised me, people I thought I knew. My father looked away. My mother sighed like I was the unreasonable one. "You've changed," she said. "You used to understand family." I wanted to call the police, but Emily begged me not to. "Please, Mommy, I just want to go home." I took her and left. The whole drive home, she sat in silence, holding a handful of her own hair. That image, her tiny fingers clutching what had been taken from her, burned into my mind. That night, I trimmed her hair properly, trying to make it even. She looked at herself in the mirror and whispered, "Do I still look pretty?" My heart cracked. "You look beautiful," I told her, but inside, rage simmered like fire under ice. I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the scene, my sister's smug grin, my parents' calm cruelty. I opened my phone and saw their group message. "We think it's best you step away for now. You've always been dramatic. We're worried about your influence on Emily." Influence. They humiliated her, traumatized her, and they dared to act like we were the problem. My aunt, my mother's sister, reacted to that message with a shocked emoji and then privately texted me what happened. I told her everything, every horrifying detail. She replied, "They've always been like this. You just didn't see it." That hit me hard. Maybe she was right. Maybe I'd spent years pretending their emotional manipulation was just their way. But now they had hurt my child. And that I couldn't forgive. The next morning, I took photos of the hair on the carpet, the scissors, and Emily's tear-streaked face from that night. I wrote everything down. Then I posted it online, not out of vengeance, but out of truth. I titled it, "What My Family Did to My Daughter." Within hours, it spread like wildfire. Comments poured in, thousands of strangers offering love, support, and outrage. Mothers wrote, "You did the right thing." Some shared their own stories of controlling families. Emily saw the support and smiled faintly for the first time since it happened. But the backlash toward my family was brutal. My sister texted, "Take it down. You're ruining our lives." My mother called me hysterical, screaming about family reputation. My father, however, stayed silent until one night he showed up at my door. He looked older than I'd ever seen him. He handed me a small photo album, pictures of me as a child, hair long and shining. "Your mother hated that," he said quietly. "She used to say you got too much attention. I should have stopped her back then." He looked at Emily, sleeping on the couch, and tears welled in his eyes. I couldn't stop her this time either. "I'm sorry." He left before I could say a word. That night I cried, not for them, but for the little girl I used to be, the one who never got an apology, for Emily who almost lost her light. But I promised myself this: it ends here. No more silence. No more forgiveness for cruelty disguised as family values. The days that followed felt like walking through a storm that wouldn't end. My phone kept buzzing with messages from relatives, half of them calling me brave, the other half calling me ungrateful. My sister made a tearful post online claiming I had exaggerated everything, painting herself as the victim. But screenshots don't lie. People had already seen her messages laughing about putting Emily in her place. The truth was out, and no amount of fake tears could erase it. Still, the chaos took its toll. Emily didn't want to go to school. She was afraid people would stare at her short hair or talk about what happened. I reassured her that no one would, but I could see the hurt in her eyes. One night she asked, "Mom, why would Grandma do that to me if she loves me?" I didn't have an answer. How do you explain cruelty from people who are supposed to protect you? I told her, sometimes people love in the wrong way, but that's not your fault. I started therapy for both of us. Slowly, Emily began to smile again, her laughter returning in small pieces. Her hair started growing back, and so did her confidence. Meanwhile, my parents tried to repair their image. My mother called once saying, "You've turned the whole family against us." I said, "No, Mom, you did that yourself." Then I hung up. It was the first time in my life I didn't cry after talking to her. My sister kept sending messages alternating between anger and guilt. I ignored them all. I had no space left for her drama. What surprised me most was how many people reached out after reading my post. Teachers, mothers, even a journalist who wanted to cover our story about toxic family control. I didn't want fame, but I agreed to share it anonymously because I wanted awareness for every child who had been shamed, humiliated, or silenced in the name of discipline. When the article went viral, the comments section overflowed with stories from around the world. One line stuck with me. "You didn't break the family. You broke the cycle." That became my new mantra. One afternoon, Emily came home from school holding a small pink envelope. "It's for you," she said shyly. Inside was a note from her teacher. "Emily stood up for a classmate today who was being bullied for her hair. You're raising a strong girl," I cried. But this time they were happy tears. My daughter had turned her pain into empathy. The very thing they tried to break made her stronger. Then something unexpected happened. My father called again. "Your mother isn't well," he said quietly. "She's been crying for days. She wants to see you and Emily." Every part of me screamed no. But Emily overheard and asked softly, "Can I forgive her, Mom?" That question hit me harder than anything. Forgiveness wasn't something I wanted to give, but maybe it was something Emily needed to see. So a week later, we went. My mother looked smaller, frailer, like a shadow of the woman who once terrified me. When she saw Emily, she started crying uncontrollably. "I don't deserve to be forgiven," she said, voice trembling. "I was jealous of your happiness, of her light. I wanted to control what I didn't understand." For a long time, no one spoke. Then Emily walked up to her and said, "I forgive you, Grandma, but please don't ever hurt anyone again." It was such a simple, pure sentence, one that carried more strength than any punishment could. My mother nodded, tears streaming down her face. We left without promises, without hugs, but with a strange sense of peace. Maybe forgiveness isn't about them. Maybe it's about freeing yourself from their shadow. In the months that followed, things slowly found balance. Emily's hair grew to her shoulders again, curling softly at the ends. She joined her school's art club, painting pictures of girls with crowns and short hair, each one smiling, confident, whole. My aunt told me that my parents had stopped showing up to family gatherings. "They're embarrassed," she said. "But maybe that's good. Maybe they'll think about what they did." I didn't care anymore. My life had moved on. One evening, as Emily and I sat watching the sunset, she rested her head on my shoulder and said, "Mom, I'm glad you told the truth. If you didn't, maybe they'd do it again to someone else." That one sentence made every ounce of pain worth it. I realized that standing up, even when it costs you everything, is still the right thing to do. Months later, my sister posted a picture of Lily online with the caption, "Learning to be kind." I didn't like it, didn't comment, didn't share. But I smiled because maybe, just maybe, the lesson had reached further than I thought. The internet moved on, as it always does, but we didn't. For us, life had been rewritten. Emily started a small project at school, Kind Cuts, collecting donations for kids who lost their hair to illness. The irony wasn't lost on me, but I loved the name. When they invited me to the school assembly, Emily gave a short speech. She said, "Someone once tried to take my hair to make me feel small, but my mom showed me that truth makes you big again." The whole room clapped. I couldn't stop crying. Later, a woman approached me and whispered, "Your story helped me leave my toxic family too." That's when I knew we hadn't just healed ourselves. We'd helped others start their healing too. As we drove home that day, Emily leaned out the window, her hair dancing in the wind. She laughed the same free, beautiful laugh from her birthday morning, only stronger now. And I thought about all the years I spent believing family loyalty meant silence. It doesn't. Sometimes love means walking away. Sometimes loyalty means telling the truth. Sometimes family isn't who you're born to. It's who stands beside you when everything falls apart. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, I realized something simple yet powerful. My daughter's strength had rebuilt something inside me that my parents had broken long ago. The cycle was truly over. We were free, years passed, but the memory of that day never truly left us. It lived quietly beneath the surface, a scar that no one could see, but we both carried. Still, life moved forward as it always does. Emily grew into a teenager with fire in her eyes and empathy in her heart. She no longer flinched when people mentioned her grandmother or aunt. Instead, she spoke about what happened with calm confidence, like someone who had already turned pain into purpose. She once told me, "Mom, if we hadn't gone through that, I don't think I'd be who I am today." I looked at her, tall, strong, her hair flowing freely again, and I believed her. When she turned 16, her school nominated her for a national essay contest on the theme of the power of truth. She wrote about our story, about how silence can be more dangerous than confrontation, and about how forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. Her words spread online again, just like my post had years before. Only this time, it wasn't filled with anger, it was filled with hope. She won first place. During her award speech, she said, "The people who hurt you don't define your story the way you rise after they do." When she looked into the crowd and smiled at me, I realized she wasn't just my daughter anymore. She was my teacher. After her essay went viral, we started receiving messages from organizations that worked with families overcoming abuse and emotional trauma. One invited us to speak at a youth conference. I hesitated at first, but Emily said, "Mom, maybe this is how we turn something ugly into something good." So we went. Standing on that stage, looking out at hundreds of faces, I felt a nervous tremor in my chest. But when I began speaking, the words came easily. "Sometimes," I said, "the hardest battles aren't fought with strangers, but with the people we love. And winning doesn't mean destroying them. It means saving yourself and protecting those who come after you." The applause was overwhelming. When it ended, a woman approached us with tears in her eyes. "Your story saved my niece," she said. She finally told us what her stepfather was doing. We got her out. "Thank you." Key. Emily hugged her tightly. That moment changed everything. We decided to start a small nonprofit together called Rise and Mend, focused on helping children and parents rebuild after family betrayal. We held support circles, art therapy classes, and storytelling nights. People came broken and left a little more whole. Sometimes, late at night after an event, Emily would fall asleep on the couch while I cleaned up the last of the papers and candles. I'd look at her and think, this is what healing looks like. One evening, my father came to one of our sessions. I hadn't seen him in nearly 5 years. His hair was grayer, his walk slower, but his eyes, they were softer. He waited until everyone left, then said, "I saw what you're doing. Your mother would have been proud." I didn't respond right away. I just looked at him and said, "Would she?" He sighed, looking at the floor. "She tried to change near the end. She watched your videos, read Emily's essay. She wanted to apologize, but she got sick before she could." A strange mixture of sadness and relief washed over me. Maybe that was all I'd ever needed. Acknowledgement that she knew she was wrong. Before he left, my father handed me a folded note. It was in my mother's handwriting. It said, "I wanted control because I didn't know how to love without fear. But you taught me that love without freedom isn't love at all." I cried silently. For years, I thought the pain she caused would stay buried like an open wound, but in that moment, it finally closed. Not because she deserved forgiveness, but because I deserved peace. When I showed the letter to Emily, she read it quietly, then said she finally understood. That night, I sat on our porch under the stars, feeling a sense of calm I hadn't known in years. The wind blew softly, lifting my hair, and I thought of the little girl who had cried on the living room floor and the woman she had become. We had both rebuilt ourselves, strand by strand. Years later, Emily graduated high school with honors. She chose to study psychology, wanting to help children who had endured emotional trauma. During her graduation ceremony, the principal called her a light born from darkness. I clapped until my hands ached. Afterward, we took a picture together, her in her cap and gown, me holding the bouquet she had given me. On the card attached, she had written, "For my first hero." I couldn't speak for a long time. When we got home, I looked at the photo of her as a little girl, hair uneven and eyes full of tears, and whispered, "We made it." In that quiet, I felt the weight of generations lift. We had done what so many couldn't, broken the cycle and built something better in its place. Sometimes I still receive messages from people who read our story online years ago. One woman wrote, "Your daughter's courage made me reconnect with mine. Thank you for teaching me that healing isn't weakness." And every time I read something like that, I smile. Because that's what this story was always about. Not revenge, not punishment, but transformation. What they meant for shame became our strength. What they tried to silence became our voice. As I sit here now, writing these words, Emily is in her college dorm, starting a new chapter. She still calls every night, still ends every conversation the same way. Good night, Mom. I love you. Thank you for fighting for me. And I always say, you're the reason I did. The world can be cruel, but it can also be kind. Sometimes the greatest act of rebellion is to turn pain into love. And as long as my daughter carries that truth, I know we've already won.